I try my best to not let cancer define me and rob me of my life. I don't know how long God has me on this earth, but I'm not going to be sitting up here like depressed and, I have cancer. I'm going to live my life. And if I can say anything, don't let it stop you. Keep going, because it's just cancer. That's just it. It's just cancer.
Hi, this is Patrick.
And this is Laura.
And you're listening to This is Cancer.
Brought to you by Siteman Cancer Center at Barnes Jewish Hospital and Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. National leaders in cancer.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of This is Cancer. Laura was saying before we started recording that we need to keep this one very cool, very chill. Vibey, because our guest today, Candice, set the tone when she came in. And I think your quote was,
we're bringing the cool cancer vibes today.
That's right. It's all about cool cancer vibes today.
And Dr. Thaker, are you ready to be cool and vibey today?
Absolutely.
Oh, I love it. I love it. This is going to be calming for anyone listening today.
Yes.
Now, what do you mean by that when you say you bring in the cool? Like, you're basically saying, like, you're not sweating it.
We're
right?
not sweating it. You know, I feel like a lot of times, with cancer, it's bad. But at the same time, I want to show that there's another side to it, that you don't have to let cancer have you. You have cancer and you set the tone.
I love it.
Oh, I love it. We're gonna get along just fine today. Oh, yeah. Candice, we want to hear a little bit about your story and what started you on your cancer journey, but also, Dr. Thaker, we'd love to introduce you and have you tell our listeners and viewers what you do at Siteman Cancer Center.
Well, thank you for having me and hosting this really important episode. And I want to thank Candice because she's an inspiration to a lot of patients and will hopefully be very inspirational to our whole audience today. My name is Premal Thaker. I'm a GYN oncologist at Siteman Cancer Center, Washington University School of Medicine. I'm the interim chief of gynecologic oncology. I'm an endowed professor, and I also run our clinical trials. So very excited about also new treatments and therapies that we are able to give and offer our patients every day.
And we'll definitely be talking about those today for sure. And you are Candice's physician.
Yes,
That's why
I
you're
am.
both here together today. And Candice, I'd love to start off with when you started noticing the issues that led to your diagnosis. You're an avid traveler, and that's when you started noticing some things weren't quite right, correct?
Correct. Yes. So I'd actually just got back from a trip. I had went to Rimini, Italy, for a little bit of R&R. I have somewhat of a hectic, stressful job. Dr. Thaker can attest. I'm always carrying that backpack around. But, I got back the next day. Everything seemed okay. Thursday, woke up. I felt like my food didn't quite digest right. I'm like, a little indigestion. Went to work and I went to the bathroom and I happened to look at my stomach. I was like, gee, my stomach looks really, really bloated. And, didn't really think too much of it. Thought maybe I'm retaining a little bit of water, just traveled. Maybe, some
Jet
water
lag or
pills,
something.
jet lag.
Yeah, something on the heels of a trip. It could,
right.
Your mind's going to go to a number of things.
Exactly. And so, I said, well, I'll give it till Sunday. If it doesn't improve by Sunday, I'm going to go to the ER. So I end up, going to the ER Sunday at a partnering hospital over in Illinois. And they did some scans, and then it came back that there was a large mass in my pelvic region. And so, I was informed that I needed to reach out to a gyne-onc to, further find out, exactly what's going on. And so that started me on my path and led me to Dr. Thaker. And I, just feel like God charted that and led me to her, because the original OBGYN that they suggested I go to, they said that they couldn't see me until like December. And I said, oh, no. This was like November at the beginning, like November 5th. And, Dr. Thaker's office got me in there like a week later. So that was amazing.
Yeah.
Yes. And I will say that, again, I cannot sing the praises of Dr. Thaker and her team enough, because even in the beginning stages, like, they were very communicative with me. They, kept the lines of communication open. Anytime, there was, we first had the issue of the fluid, so the periocentesis. So,
this is what you're noticing when you're
right.
That this is
Right.
what that
The mass
fluid is?
was causing you to gain fluid, and it was just getting more and more fluid by the day.
Exactly. And so Dr. Thaker, I believe, made the call to go ahead and have me admitted into Barnes. And so once I was admitted, I was able to get like all of the testing done, get the periocentesis done, and, blood work, and, basically everything that she needed, so that, when I met with her, she could, assess what was going on, put a treatment plan together, and, we start to knock this thing out. But I will say that they do an excellent job at communication, even, just paperwork that I've had to have signed for work, and just all of that stuff. Like, they do a phenomenal job. And I know that sometimes people may feel like Siteman and BJC is this big Goliath, but they do have systems in place to where you can reach out and get access to people, and they will call you back. Even though you may have to leave a message, they will call you back. Mm-hmm. They will call you back.
I think we should take a step back here and make sure we talk about what the diagnosis actually was, right, when you were able to get with Candice, and then that will help us explain why you had to have that procedure to get the fluid off. So what did you find when you finally were able to take a look at her and decide on her case?
Right. So we, did the radiographic imaging, which demonstrated, an enlarged uterus and that there was fluid in the abdomen, as well as, the cancer had spread outside of the uterus. And so we did, some biopsies to figure out what was the cell type, where was it originating from, because a lot of times when cancer has already spread to other organs, then it's hard to know where did it start, right? And so those are really critical to determine what are the next steps or what is the right order of treatment for patients.
So what did the pathology find? What type of cancer was it?
So it's a uterine cancer, otherwise known as endometrial cancer. And unfortunately, in the United States, it's the only cancer that's rising in its numbers per year. So most cancers are either flat in the number of patients who are diagnosed, or it's declining. But uterine cancer, sadly, is increasing. So we're going to have approximately 68,000 women this year alone diagnosed in the United States with endometrial or uterine cancer. So it's really something that's become like critical. We may pretty soon even overtake breast cancer if we continue at this rate of rise.
Wow.
Year after year. So it's pretty shocking, and it's worldwide a phenomenon, mm-hmm, just not in the United States.
Do we know why?
So we think some of it is due to lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Some of it's really unknown, mm-hmm, as well, because it does seem to have an increased chance of occurring in our minority populations, like African American patients, Hispanic patients, but even in Caucasians it's rising. So we're all trying to do a lot of work to try to figure out what is causing this. But, some of it is thought to be related a little bit to our society being overweight, mm-hmm, because it's the extra estrogen in our bodies. Mm-hmm. And there's some thought, could it be also from, foods that we eat? Because there are thought of hormones being given to some of the products of foods that we eat too. So I think it's a combination of things. And we're lucky at Siteman, we're doing a lot of research. We actually have, fortunately, a very large research grant that's led by one of my partners, Dr. Much, for the endometrial spore, because we're really interested in understanding not only better therapies, but also prevention. So Dr. Hageman's doing some prevention work too. So we're really trying to do a lot in this disease.
So Candice, I want to ask you this, because when we always try and ask questions for those that are listening that are not as educated about the internal organ system, right? Including me sometimes. When you found out, mm-hmm, uterine cancer, mm-hmm, that's your uterus, mm-hmm, but when you hear endometrial cancer, mm-hmm, were you like, what is that?
Actually, no, because I know they're used interchangeably, and my mother had endometrial cancer, but they caught it at like stage 0, and Dr. Much actually was her doctor. That's
gosh.
part of like the path, because I knew that Dr. Much treated her and he did a phenomenal job, so I was trying to get to him, but I was told he was retiring, and then they was like, but we have someone that's just as great.
The next generation of, yeah.
Yes, the superstar next to me. So,
Dr. Many.
right.
Dr. Many Answers is next. Dr. Thaker.
Right. So I knew what it was. And like I said, had my own experience with it secondhand with my mom, but obviously, mine was at stage 4, as opposed to hers. She just had a little surgery and she was whoop, 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 whoop.
Mm-hmm.
Mine involved a little bit more with the chemo and surgery, but yeah.
So endometrial cancer is the lining of the uterus.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
But then people might be confused because they might hear, well, when you have your period every month, isn't that you shedding the lining of your uterus?
It is, but it's just like any organ. We just don't know, but it can go through precancerous changes and then ultimately cancerous changes. It's sort of like, on the skin. We all have skin, and then they're like, oh, if I had a precancerous mole, we'll just zap that and get it out. Mm-hmm. For the uterus, it's like, during your normal menstrual cycles when you're younger, that's a normal shedding. Mm-hmm. However, as we age, there's, an aging process to our bodies, and we don't know what that switch is that turns things. Because usually endometrial cancer tends to be of women who are what we call postmenopausal, who've gone through menopause and have stopped having regular menstrual cycles. But we are seeing a shift that it's happening in earlier women. So we actually get women who are going through fertility treatments who get found out with uterine or endometrial cancer because they're going and they're like, I can't get pregnant. Mm-hmm. And then they get a biopsy of their uterus by their infertility specialist when they see them, and they get found out like, oh, I have a precancer, I have an early cancer, or a cancerous process. Wow. Then they get sent to us. So, it's interesting. People come to us in different ways with this, especially as, a lot of people are delaying childbearing. So, they just think, oh, I must be a little older and that's why it's not happening. And then they find out something like this.
Forgive me for asking this if it sounds dumb, but, if you are shedding your lining of your uterus every month, then how does the lining of your uterus get cancer? Like I'm not a gynecologist, so I'm like, well, my period comes, I've shed the lining of my uterus, but if it's a cancer of the lining of your uterus, where does that cancer go if you're shedding your lining of your uterus? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, it does. So, I'd say there's 2 different ways. One, there's the most common endometrial cancer types, which tend to happen when you're older and in menopause. So you should not be shedding any lining.
Right.
And then it's just probably like aging and issues like that. But then in women who are younger, for instance, you are shedding your lining. But remember, every time we shed or do something, it causes damage, microscopically or at the cell level. So it's not something you're going to see in your menstrual flow or say, oh, this is different. But you may say, over time, maybe my periods are lasting longer, or they're coming more frequent, or things like that. And it's sometimes hard for us as gynecologists, or, before they get to me, they see their gynecologist and they're like, I'm having a heavier period, and maybe it's perimenopause, like I'm going through the change, right? Because everyone's different when that may start. Some people start earlier. So we don't know the exact cellular level as to why that shedding, changes. It's
Gotcha.
sort of like a lot of cancers. We don't know what that switch is that changes a normal function into a cancerous function. And that's what I think is the holy grail of trying to figure this out.
Right.
So
well, that helps me understand it, because Candice, did you notice any difference in your periods at all looking back? I mean, or would you even known to think, oh, maybe this is because of...
Looking back on it, absolutely. It was one of those things where I thought, it was, being that I'm a plus size woman, I thought, well, maybe that has something to do with, as, Dr. Thaker mentioned earlier. And so, when I did reach out to my physician, she was like, okay, well, let's start you on birth control to help regulate. And so we did that, and it worked for, a number of years. But then, like I said, even on that trip, I noticed it was like very irregular spotting going on and just, cramps here and there. It was just really weird. And so, looking back on it, it's like, wow, I guess, that's what it was. But it's so hard to really pinpoint because as a woman, you have all of these different issues that go on with your reproductive system. You have fibroids, and I thought being that I'm a Black woman, that's something that, a lot of Black women, within my community deal with. So I thought maybe it's fibroids or something because I'm like, what's causing this?
You have a high stress job.
Right.
Stress affects your menstrual
stress,
cycle.
You said endometriosis, there's just so many things. And so, when he did come back with the diagnosis, I was like, oh, wow. It kind of threw me because my mind never went to cancer. I'm thinking maybe I have cysts because I've had problems with cysts in the past.
Me too.
But, they were not cancerous, but it caused me to have those heavy periods. And so there's just a number of things, that we as women go through within our bodies. And, you really have to, keep seeking out the answer and get to the root of it.
Candice, when you found out that it was cancer, and then you found out that it was staged at 4, and you were 40 at the time?
I had just turned 41.
You just turned 41. Can you share a little bit about what that was like to learn that, and then what your treatment plan was going to be, how you went about mentally taking that on?
So, I mentally prepared myself. I don't know. You can call it a mental fortitude, mental mathematics, whatever, but I mentally prepared myself for she's either going to say stage 3 or stage 4.
You had some intuition, you said.
I had an intuition that it was either going to be stage 3 or stage 4 because, when the man said it was a large mass, I was like, that doesn't sound too good. And like I said, I've got a friend that's in the medical field and, I'm telling her everything and I'm like, what's the omentum? What is that? So, I started doing my own research and I came in with my slew of questions and stuff. But when she told me, I pretty much held a brave face because I wanted to make sure I got everything. I wanted to make sure I heard her clearly. So I didn't want to get my emotions too wrapped up in it to where I'm not listening. So I listened to what Dr. Thaker said. And, she told me what it was, that it was stage 4 endometrial cancer, and then that she had charted a plan as far as treatment goes. And she was like, we're gonna do 6 cycles of chemo, and depending on how your body responds after the 3rd treatment, we'll do a scan to see if you are a candidate for surgery, and we'll do surgery, and then you'll continue on with the other 3 cycles. And so I did ask her the question of death, about mortality, what the mortality rate was like, for someone being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And, she said it was like, I want to say like 15 to 25%, but she said something, that struck a chord with me. She said, but it depends on what type of person are you? Are you a glass half full or are you a glass half empty person? And I said, well, I'm a glass half full person. And I said, we going to deal with this. We going to deal with it, and we going to deal with it head on. And, that's what we have been doing ever since. I come in there with a positive attitude. I'm trying not to cry, but I come in there with a positive attitude. I come in there looking good.
Yes.
And I try my best to not let cancer define me and rob me of my life. I don't know how long God has me on this earth, but I'm not going to be sitting up here like depressed and, I have cancer. I'm going to live my life. I still travel. I go to work. I come in there and I work. I bust my butt. And I don't let this stop me. And if I can say anything, don't let it stop you. Keep going until the very end, because it's just cancer. That's just it. It's just cancer. You are still you. And you don't let that take over your personality of who you are. And I feel like sometimes when people are going through cancer, it's like it becomes them. But no, you're not going to rob me, baby. I'm too fabulous. I have too much going on. I'm still going to be Candice at the end of the day. And so that's what I try to remind myself each and every day. You be you. Yes, you have this going on. Yes, you have to take pills. Yes, you have to take injections and infusions and blood transfusions and all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, you still be you. And you just keep going. Like I said, you have to Nike that stuff. You have to keep going. Don't think about it. Once you get over to the other side, then think about it. But as you're going through this journey, just keep going.
Yep.
Keep going.
Where do you get that strength from? Is it your mom? Is it your friends, your family, all the above?
It's my faith.
Yeah.
My faith first and foremost. It's my community. I have a huge support system. I have people that rallied around me, like literally I want to share this real quick. I had an aunt. When I first was diagnosed, it was around Thanksgiving time. So, and I just had that tube placed in my abdomen.
Yeah.
And that was to remove the fluid and keep the fluid off as you were going through the first part of chemo.
Exactly. And so, I was a little bit incapacitated, but I have an aunt that lived in Chicago. And she came down here and she made sure I had Thanksgiving food. And she was like, I wasn't going to leave you out. I wanted to make sure you had something. And God bless her. So the Lord took her a week after Mother's Day. And, I had to go up there and plan her funeral. But I'm fighting for her, for what she did. I'm fighting for my mother. I'm fighting for all the people that are dealing with this horrible, wretched disease. I'm fighting for them, and I just want them to see that, even while you're going through it, there's still sunshine, and that's one of the things that this has taught me. It's taught me to be more kind. It's taught me to stop and smell the roses. It's taught me to, really be empathetic towards other people. It's taught me to just stop and just really appreciate life. And appreciate the people that God has placed in my life.
And I can attest as well to your tenacity and your strength. This isn't just you being inspirational. If you're listening to this and not watching it, you have a bright orange, beautiful jumpsuit on, and you had chemo on Monday.
Yes, ma'am.
And you are on day 3, and most people would have their butts in bed.
Yes, ma'am.
And you weren't feeling great this morning, and you prayed about it. You walked in here because you are who you are.
Absolutely. I want to add one more thing. Candice is very humble. So I came out of her surgery, and I'm talking about a team. She is well loved. It was packed. People had flown in to be here, to be with her. So, she has a social support network, which is huge. And that's important, because I think the fact of the matter is that, she inspires others. And it was like amazing to me, because I was like, now who are you and who are you? Because, she usually comes with someone, but this was like
everyone.
This was everyone. And they're like, we got more in the waiting room, but we couldn't fit. And I was like, oh my goodness, like that is amazing, because that will carry you through. And people forget about that, because it really is important.
Is there a part of you that when you have to have that conversation with somebody and you tell them, hey, we found out that you have to break the news that you have cancer, and you have to kind of get all your ducks in a row. You have to know the stage, have them come up with the plan, so you have that big meeting. And I'm sure that's not easy, but is there a part of you that walks out of there when you meet somebody like Candice that goes, well, I can work with her? I know you're going to treat everybody, but like just getting to the point of like how much it makes a difference, what kind of person you are. I'm sure you walked out of that room, or rather, do you sometimes walk out of the room going, well, now that person's got their head in the game. This lady's locked in.
Yeah. I think, the fact of the matter is we meet people and they're in all sorts of headspace, right?
Right.
But when you meet someone like Candice, you're like, great, we got this. Because you go in with that attitude, because I can't change people's attitudes. I can give the same people the same drugs, the same stage. But I tell people all the time, you can either will yourself to keep going and make it through, or you're going to will yourself to just be like, this is going to defeat me, and I can.
And so the surgery that you had, did the surgery occur after you had completed chemo? Was it in the middle of it? Was it kind of in tandem?
So it was like right in the middle. So I completed 3 rounds of chemo, and then we had the surgery. And so since then, I've done another 4 rounds.
What was that surgery? And did you go into the surgery knowing for sure what you were going to find? Or was it one of those surgeries where this is what we think we're going to find, and if we find more, we have to take everything? Tell me about that.
Right. So we went in, to the surgery thinking we'll just be doing a hysterectomy and taking out the uterus, the cervix, and we talked about the tubes and ovaries because everything seemed to be involved. And then because her CAT scan looked really very reassuring, and then we also took the fat pad called the omentum. But, unfortunately, sometimes we don't see everything on a CAT scan, and there was more there than we thought. So we ended up lasering some areas, and some areas were places we couldn't really remove. But we definitely, so we ended up being a little disappointed, and to say that we can't get it all, right? When you come out of a surgery, and especially after you've been able to, Candice was so great to take her chemotherapy. Everything looks great. Your numbers look wonderful because there's like some tumor tests that we can do ahead of time. And the imaging shows that you're like, I'm going to get this. And then you go in there and sometimes you can't.
And so where are you at now then?
Well, so now the plan is to get a PET scan. So we'll see where we're at with that. That's a little bit more in depth with the dye.
Yep.
So, the hope is that it has not metastasized or, spread to any other regions. And then if so, I believe we've got another full round, and then it will be in the maintenance phase.
Gotcha. And so being staged at stage 4, I know it seems to vary from cancer to cancer. My uncle has prostate cancer, and I asked him about it, and he said he was stage 4, and I was like, okay, so
right.
But why are you so calm about this? But I know in your case, it was diagnosed as stage 4, but your current prognosis is pretty favorable, isn't it? I mean, compared to, I think, the typical point at which you might be stage 4. Like, it sounds like you're in pretty good shape here.
I would like to think so.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically.
Yeah.
Like I said, God could do some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So ultimately, Dr. Thaker, again, she's brilliant.
Yeah.
She has a beautiful mind, and God bless her, and I'm thankful for her. I really am. But ultimately, God is the greatest physician. He is the creator. And so I put my full trust in him. And like I said, I can work out of here today, and that's it.
Right.
But, hopefully that won't be the case.
Right. That's right.
I still got some more fabulous and traveling
That's
to do.
exactly
I'm
right.
trying to go to Barcelona in October. I'm like, Dr. Thaker, I want to go out of town. I want to go travel. And I'll ask her, I'm like, can I go? That's one of the things I told my mom, because she's like, you just go so much, Candice. You just need to sit down sometimes. And I said, but Mom, that's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me motivated. Looking forward to doing stuff, looking forward to seeing my friends, looking forward, to seeing my family. I said, that's what keep me going. Give me something to look forward to, because otherwise, who wants to just sit in the house like,
Yeah.
No.
100%. You got to
see.
keep doing what you have to keep doing the things that make you who you are.
Exactly.
Because otherwise, you are letting cancer win,
Exactly.
that battle,
Exactly.
that particular day.
Exactly.
But there has to be something said for when you hear a diagnosis like that there are some people that just aren't made like Candice.
There's a lot of people not made like Candice and her sort of optimism and great attitude, right?
Right. And it's not that they're not wrong or bad or, it's a really, people's mentalities are all so different for so many reasons, right?
They are.
Yes.
And so how do you help those that when they get that they just can't stop living in fear? What
Right.
can you do?
So it's a lot of it is taking the time to digest, and as Candice said, and giving people. Sometimes some people need a lot of information because that's how they sort of can then process and cope. Some people need very strategic points of information because otherwise they're just like they run wild if they get all the different options. And then one of the things that we actually have at Siteman is, which we're very lucky, is we also have really a great psychological support team. And they help us tremendously as well, because I wish we could do everything, but we're lucky we have a team who can do everything. So our psychologists do Zoom visits because, that's one of the great things that happened during COVID is a lot of Zoom. We all love Zoom.
Right.
But, it allows us to actually reach patients in their homes as opposed to for them coming in for physical appointments. And that's key. And then the other benefit is a lot of times the caregivers can also participate because remember, it's more than just one person going through this journey.
Right.
And how do you support that your loved one, or how do you support your friend who's going through this? And so we're very fortunate because you're right. Everyone also, it's time. People need the benefit of time to process and heal.
Right.
Dr. Thaker, I'm curious if the treatments, the way that you're treating Candice, is that different from what you would have done 10 years ago? Have there been advancements in endometrial or uterine cancers in the last 10 years? And what are you looking forward to in the next 10 years?
Right. So, there have been definitely advancements. The adding of, chemotherapy with the sort of because Candice had a lot of fluids. So we used, a medication called bevacizumab or something to dry up that fluid. So that's
the fluid that the mass was causing.
To try to help because, as you heard her say, she had to have a tube initially to help control it because imagine if you're hanging on to 2 liters of extra weight of just fluid.
She said it took off 15 pounds of fluid off of her.
Yeah.
It does.
Incredible.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So I sort of tell people, it's like, when we complain as you go to the grocery store and you're like, I'm carrying 2 2-liter bottles and you're like, this is heavy. And someone's literally carrying more than that. And it's just really can pull you down. So we also do have immunotherapy. That's been a real great advent for, you asked earlier about mismatch repair and what does this mean and things. So that has been proven to be really beneficial, especially with patients who have that abnormality in their tumor in conjunction with chemotherapy. It does have a benefit for patients who don't, but that benefit is not as great. So some of us are still not maybe giving it to all patients yet because we're also getting more sophisticated. We're learning a lot more about the molecular biology of uterine cancer because, before it was just you have uterine cancer and this is the cell type. Now we're getting down to the subcell level to understand what proteins it's expressing or not. So I'm very optimistic.
Down to that subcell level will decide the treatment. You might say
you might change your treatment.
It's not giving everyone the same treatment for uterine cancer. It's giving because you have this subtype, you're going to get this regimen, and because you have this subtype, you're going to get a little bit of a different regimen.
Right.
So it's really specifically treating them.
It's the personalization. We're getting to that point where really personalized medicine, I feel has always been talked about and spoken about. And some cancers are a little bit more ahead of that. But now we're getting there even with uterine cancer. So we can say, maybe you need radiation, maybe you don't, based on your different cell types and subcell types that we look at.
Right.
So it's really getting to be exciting because, it's not this is the standard of care that we give everybody. We're going to be able to really drill down. And I think that's what the great things about research is and why we're so passionate at Siteman and trying to figure out how to give that next best treatment. Because we're obviously, until we eliminate cancer, we're not doing a good enough job.
And immunotherapy has proven it's the next amazing thing in treating cancer, but it doesn't prove to work as much on some cancers versus others. But it is for this one, which is for endometrial, which is really important, correct?
It can if you have the right sort of subcell type. I don't want to say every patient should. And you're in an advanced stage because we also give immunotherapy if the cancer isn't responding to chemotherapy or it comes back. So, really talking with your physician because it's really hard, you need to look at patients' other comorbidities. So what other medical problems do you have? Because if you have, maybe colitis, you might not be even a candidate for immunotherapy. So we don't want people to be like, well, damn, I missed my opportunity also.
Right, exactly.
So because that's, I think, the art of medicine too, is that, yes, we have great treatments, but personalizing it to your patient and also making joint decision making. Because, when I talk to Candice about using bevacizumab, I'm like, there's great things. It's going to dry up the fluid, but it could also cause other issues with your kidneys or making a small hole in the bowel. And we talked about things like that because, at the end of the day, you also want your patients to know what they're embarking on, even though because as physicians, we're not living the life, right? We are really just trying to help encourage and to get patients to understand what treatment and options are, because every patient has a different sort of risk-benefit ratio.
Right.
And and I'd say not everyone looks at everything as sunshine. Some people would be like, whoa, that's not for me, So trying to get to figure out that patient at that level is also critical, to have those open dialogues like Candice mentioned, because I think, that's part of it. We're all human and we all want to help each other and know how to help them the best is by getting to know your patient.
Can I ask, what is the difference between endometrial cancer and endometriosis?
Sure. So endometrial cancer is actually a cancer diagnosis. So something that can metastasize and cause, destruction. Endometriosis is interesting because it's not a cancerous state, but it can cause inflammation, the favorite word you have, and destruction and fibrosis. But it's not something that gets treated with chemotherapy. It gets treated with surgery, and it's usually does not progress into cancer.
Okay.
So endometriosis is found also as a complicated disease process, because patients can be found out because they have fertility issues. So they might go to their reproductive endocrinologist or gynecologist, and they're like, I have so much pelvic pain, or I have a lot of trouble getting pregnant, and get diagnosed with endometriosis. So very rarely, less than about 1%, does it ever become cancerous, but a different type of cancer. So a lot of women do get confused because they sound similar.
It sounds like pre-cancer almost.
Right.
Wow.
But it's not.
Okay.
And we're fortunate that we have a really great division of minimally invasive gynecologic surgeons who deal with endometriosis, because they cut it out and they help women regain functionality, because a lot of women are quite debilitated from this.
For some people really, really painful and causes all kinds of issues.
And it's interesting because, I remember sometimes it goes to your lungs, and people are like, endometriosis went to my lungs. And so they, with their menstrual cycle, start coughing up blood. And so they're just like, that's weird.
How does it transport to
the lungs? So everyone's really unclear, because even what causes endometriosis is sort of not really clearly known. So it's very interesting when your pulmonary surgeon or your CT surgeon's like, it was endometriosis. And you're just because you're like, wow.
I didn't know that was possible.
Speaking of the menstrual cycle, and I know that, Candice, when you talked about your mom's endometrial cancer was not connected to the type that you had, correct?
No.
And you just noticed the signs, of you even having this pain, before you went in. You went in right away. But Dr. Thaker, you mentioned that sometimes women, if this is commonly happening to a little bit older of women. So what is the best piece of advice you can give to women when it comes to their gynecological health?
So I think the biggest piece I can give them is go to your doctor. And I think that's the key message I have, because if I have to hear one other woman tell me, I went through the change, or I went through menopause, and then, oh my God, my period came back. I'm like, you are 65 years old, and you should not be telling me your period ever comes back.
Right.
This is not a sequel to a movie that, we made
that's
once.
A symptom that
it's a symptom that they just ignored. And so then they're like, oh, I just thought it was normal. And I'm like, no, it's not. So we need to also educate women better that once you go through menopause, you should never have bleeding down there. And if you do, it should be a real critical sign to say, one spot's too much, go get checked out.
So if you have not had a period in a year, that means you've likely gone through menopause if there have been no other surgical or medical interventions, right?
Right.
And after a year, if you have not had a period, or maybe it's been 2 or 3 and you have blood, that's the first sign you need to go see somebody.
You do.
Especially if you're talking about this rise of endometrial and uterine cancers.
Absolutely.
That's what happened with my mom.
Even if it abates, you need to get it checked out. You should
just get it checked out, because the fact is someone's like, oh, I'll wait till next month, and then next month becomes next month, and and the earlier you come to attention, ideally we'll find you at an earlier stage and really hopefully cure and not need as aggressive treatments.
Right. Do you find that blood, or that when you said that happened to your mom, is that sort of the first sign?
For a lot of women, that is.
And what does that mean? That it could be at any stage at that point? Is that correct?
It's usually found early because if women identify that as sort of a warning sign, then they'll come to attention. Now, they may get sent to a urologist or someone else because, it's blood down there, right? And it could be from your rectum. It could be
whatever.
from...
It starts the process.
It just starts the process to get you to health care. And so...
Because the urologist would say it's not your blood, so now you need to go to your gynecologist or something, right?
So I just sort of mention it because, the other problem that happens is a lot of women, like you said, think that all we do is a pap smear. And they're like, well, now I'm 50. I don't need pap smears. I just don't need this exam. And really, your gynecologist, needs to see you. And we need to do better as a society to realize that exam is just part of an exam that a gynecologist does. It's not the entire exam or the entire history we take.
Yeah.
That's a great...
Yeah,
if you had one piece of advice, I think that's a great one.
Yeah, that is a huge takeaway because I think there's always little things that we learn about, but I had never heard that before. And so I think that's something we really need to just keep letting women know. Year without a period, that means you're menopause. If you're bleeding after that, you need to go see your doctor.
Yes, get checked out.
Candice, what about you? What's a piece of advice that you'd want to give other women when it comes to their gynecological health?
I would say, pretty much piggybacking off of what Dr. Thaker said, don't ignore it. Don't just sweep it under the carpet like, oh, it's kind of like what I did, thinking like, oh, well, maybe, it's this or maybe it's that. But, listen to your body. And so, like I said, big ups to Dr. Thaker. This woman is amazing. She's brilliant, and she is a great advocate for women's health. She's a great advocate, particularly for gynae health, and she empowers women. That's one thing I really do like about Dr. Thaker is that she's going to tell you the good and she's going to tell you the bad. She's going to tell you everything, but what she won't tell you is a lie. You talk about me, but she has been a rock star because she has to do this for so many patients. And I'm sure even with each patient that you treat, you have to put on a different hat. You have to almost present another side of yourself to be able to deal with those personalities. So she does a lot. So look, my hat goes off.
Oh, man.
My hat goes off to you.
Oh, my God.
For doing what you do and doing it every day and doing it with grace and humility. Oh. And I am so happy to have you as my physician. Oh. Thank you, Dr. Thaker. Thank you.
And now I'm going to start crying. So
I refuse.
Well, I want to thank Candice because it's not easy to do this, and it takes a special, unique patient who's willing to put themselves out there, and she's a great role model, and I think it comes through with her passion and her desire, and we all can learn from her because every day is a gift, and we sometimes all take it for granted, and so there's so much to learn from our patients, and that's what's inspiring to me as a physician.
Yeah.
So I want to thank her for doing this.
Thank you.
Being such a great role model because I'm like tearing and tearing. So it's great that this is a video one because people are going to be like,
I know,
this is a tearjerker.
Right.
This is, but it's with a tearjerker with a cool vibe.
We presented the cool vibes.
We did.
Thanks for listening to This is Cancer.
Brought to you by Siteman Cancer Center at Barnes Jewish Hospital and Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis.
National leaders in cancer.
For more information on Siteman Cancer Center, go to siteman.wustl.edu and be sure to leave us a review and like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.